I'm standing at the security line when an officer fires 3 bullets at me. He has no idea that the woman in the crimson hoodie he just shot is a federal judge. But I'm about to make that very clear. The sound wasn't the deafening blast you hear in movies. It was a series of flat, ugly pops. Pop, pop, pop. The first one missed, whining past my ear with a vicious hiss. The second ripped through the sleeve of my crimson hoodie, a phantom touch of cold air. The third found its mark. It wasn't a sharp pain, not at first. It was heat, a sudden, searing line of fire that raced up my arm, turning my muscles to stone. For a heartbeat, the entire terminal at Denver International held its breath. The screech of rolling suitcases, the low hum of the ventilation, the tinny voice announcing boarding zones. It all vanished, sucked into a vacuum of pure shock. Then came the screams. I didn't scream. My gaze was locked on Officer Mark Keller. His face was pale, a constellation of sweat beading on his forehead. The gun in his hand trembled, a slight, almost imperceptible tremor that betrayed the bravado in his stance. His eyes, wide and darting, weren't looking at me as a person. They were looking at a threat that had failed to materialize. I felt something warm and sticky soaking through the fabric of my sleeve. I didn't need to look down to know what it was. My vision sharpened, the chaos around me fading into a blurry backdrop. The faces of passengers peering from behind pillars, the TSA agents frozen at their stations. They were just scenery. The only thing that mattered was the man in the uniform and the lie forming on his lips. She reached for her phone. He blurted out, his voice a half octave too high. She made a sudden move. I slowly, deliberately raised my uninjured hand, palm open. My other arm hung uselessly at my side, a dead weight screaming with silent fire. My mind wasn't on legal precedent or constitutional law. It was on my nephew, Leo, and the faint purple bruise I'd seen under his eye 2 weeks ago after a random search. This, I thought, the heat in my arm flaring, this is what he felt. My voice, when it came, was unervingly calm. It didn't carry far, but it cut through the rising panic like a scalpel. You just shot an unarmed civilian. Officer Keller. He flinched at the sound of his name. I let the silence hang for a moment, letting the weight of my words settle on him. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the frantic search for a narrative that would save him. Then I stood up straight, ignoring the screaming protest from my shoulder. I squared my body to face him, my 5'7" frame suddenly feeling like a giant's. Actually, I said, my voice dropping into the precise, measured tone I used from the bench. Let me rephrase that. You just shot a federal judge, officer, and I suggest you holster your weapon because this airport is now a crime scene. The chaos swirled around me, a symphony of panicked shouts, radio static, and the approaching wail of sirens. Paramedics rushed in, their faces grim, try to guide me onto a gurney. A supervisor, his tie askew and his expression a mask of damage control, was already trying to isolate Officer Keller. But in my mind, I wasn't entirely there. I was drifting. The crimson hoodie I wore wasn't a random choice. It was part of an experiment, my own quiet, personal audit of the system I served. It started with Leo. He's a good kid, top of his class, with an acceptance letter to Stanford sitting on his desk. But 3 weeks ago, flying home from a debate tournament, he was pulled out of a security line. His offense? Being a young black man in a hoodie. They emptied his bag, patted him down, questioned him for 45 minutes while his teammates watched. He told me later, his voice hollow, Annie Noel, it was like they were just waiting for me to breathe wrong. I saw the ghost of my father in his eyes. I was 7 when they came for my dad. He was on our porch in Atlanta, still in his work boots from the recycling plant, smelling of rust and honest labor. The charge was a failure to appear for a jaywalking ticket that had been mailed to the wrong address. They cuffed him anyway, in front of our neighbors, in front of me. He lost his job. That single, casual act of bureaucratic cruelty broke something in our family. It was supposed to be my mother, Patrice, who wore the robe. She made it to her second year of law school, a brilliant mind fueled by coffee and a righteous fire. But she had to drop out. No one in the 70s would hire a black woman with 2 kids to juggle night shifts and case law. She became a paralegal instead, a ghostwriter of legal arguments in courtrooms she was meant to command. She never complained. She just looked at me one night over a stack of legal briefs and said, "You get in that room, Noel, and you don't ever wait for permission to speak." I listened. I fought my way to Spelman, then to the top of my class at Harvard Law. I became the youngest public defender in Fulton County, then a district judge, and finally, at 38, a United States Court of Appeals judge for the Fourth Circuit. I'd gotten into the room, but the higher I climbed, the more I realized the room had invisible walls. At judicial conferences, I was mistaken for an aide. At fancy law firm dinners, I was asked which judge I clerked for. The system loved the idea of me, the inspiring story of a black woman's rise. But it was uncomfortable with the reality of my power. So, I started the experiments. I would fly commercial, no pre-check, no title, just a regular citizen in a hoodie. I needed to see the system through Leo's eyes, through my father's eyes. I had never imagined it would lead to this. A paramedic was pressing a bandage to my arm, his voice a distant buzz. "Ma'am, we need to go." I looked past him, my gaze finding Officer Keller. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at his supervisor, rehearsing his lines. My father never got to tell his side of the story. I would make damn sure I told mine. They didn't take me to a hospital, not right away. I was escorted to a sterile, windowless medical office tucked away in the airport's administrative wing. It felt less like a treatment room and more like a holding cell. A federal marshal, a man named Harris with tired eyes, stood guard at the door. He handed me a tablet with the initial incident report. I read the sanitized, bureaucratic prose. Female subject, non-compliant with verbal commands, made furtive movements. Officer, fearing for his safety, discharged his weapon according to protocol. Furtive movements. The words were a legal shield, a prepackaged lie designed to absolve and protect. I felt a cold anger settle in my gut. The system wasn't just broken, it was self-healing. It closed ranks around its own, immediately rewriting reality to fit a narrative of justification. I handed the tablet back to Harris without a word. My silence seemed to unnerve him more than any outburst would have. "Judge Whitaker," he began, "the DOJ is aware. Your court administrator is on a flight from D.C. We need to manage the optics." "Optics?" I interrupted, my voice dangerously soft. I was shot marshal, while holding a phone with my boarding pass on the screen. The only optic that matters right now is the truth. My mind was already racing, mapping out the next steps. I needed to secure the evidence before it could be lost or corrupted. And I knew exactly who held the most crucial piece. Through the open doorway, I caught a glimpse of her, a young TSA agent with sharp, intelligent eyes and a pale, determined face. During the confrontation, I'd seen her subtly angle her body, her hand hovering near a small, metallic pin on her uniform. It was a new piece of tech, a miniature body cam they were testing. She knew. She had seen everything, and she had recorded it. Her name was Chloe Vance. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. I gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. A silent contract passed between us. Hold on to it. Don't let them take it from you. Just then, a crisp, uniformed airport official entered, holding another tablet. He avoided my gaze. "Judge Whitaker, on behalf of the Denver International Airport Authority, we have been compelled to file a formal complaint regarding this incident." I stared at him, incredulous. "A complaint? Against whom?" He cleared his throat. "Against you, ma'am. For obstruction of a federal security procedure and failure to comply with a lawful order." I laughed. It wasn't a sound of amusement. It was a dry, bitter bark of a laugh that held no warmth. Of course, this was the next move in the playbook. When you can't justify the violence, criminalize the victim. Make her the aggressor. Turn her survival into an act of defiance. They hadn't just shot my body. They were now trying to assassinate my credibility. They thought I was just another victim, trapped in their maze of procedures and paperwork. They had forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't just a player in their game. I was the one who wrote the rules. Less than 24 hours later, I walked into a federal courtroom. My arm was in a sling beneath my robe, a dull, throbbing reminder of the previous day. But as I stepped onto the dais, I felt no pain. I felt only a cold, crystalline focus. I had invoked Section 1429B of the Federal Public Oversight Act, a little-known but powerful tool that allows a federal judge to convene an emergency hearing in response to a systemic threat to constitutional rights. I didn't ask for permission. I was the ranking judge in the district. I was the permission. The room was packed. In the front row sat a team of lawyers representing the airport, the city of Denver, and the TSA. Officer Keller wasn't there. He was on administrative leave, but his bosses were, their faces a mixture of irritation and anxiety. They thought this was a procedural formality, a chance to placate a VIP who had been inconvenienced. They had no idea they were the ones on trial. The clerk's voice rang out, "All rise." The room shuffled to its feet. This emergency hearing is now in session. The Honorable Judge Noel A. Whitaker presiding. A wave of stunned silence rolled through the gallery as the name connected with the face from the news. I saw the airport's general counsel, a man named Gerald Lom, visibly pale. The whisper shot through the rows. "She's the judge. The one who got shot." Lom stood, adjusting his silk tie. "Your Honor, with all due respect, we question the impartiality of this proceeding. You are the subject of the incident in question." I looked down at him from the bench. "I'm not the subject, Mr. Lom. I am the evidence. Do you believe my rights as a citizen are suspended simply because I wear this robe?" He had no answer. I was not pulled aside because of suspicious behavior. I stated, my voice echoing in the chamber. I was pulled aside because I fit a profile that has never been written down, but is enforced every single day in this country. A profile that tells men like Officer Keller that confidence in a black woman is aggression, that a question is defiance, that a cell phone in her hand might as well be a weapon. I gestured to the side. I call my first and only witness, Miss Chloe Vance. Chloe walked to the witness stand, her back straight, her expression resolute. They had suspended her that morning. But before they took her credentials, she had emailed the video file to a secure, private account. "My account, Ms. Vance," I said. "Please describe the device you were wearing on your uniform yesterday." "It's a beta version of a new evidentiary capture device," she said, her voice clear and steady. "A high-resolution body camera." "And did you activate that device during the incident involving myself and Officer Keller?" "I did, Your Honor." I turned my gaze to the large screen set up to my left. "Play the video." The courtroom dimmed. The raw, unedited footage filled the screen. There I was, walking calmly. There was Officer Keller, his voice barking orders. There was me, reaching slowly for my phone to show my boarding pass. And then the gun. The pops. The blood blooming on my crimson sleeve. The video showed no threat, no aggression, no furtive movements. It showed only a routine interaction that escalated into violence because of one man's prejudice. When the lights came up, the silence was absolute. It was the silence of guilt. I looked at the row of lawyers and officials. "The system you represent," I said, my voice low but carrying the full weight of my authority, "has demonstrated a catastrophic failure to protect the constitutional rights of a citizen. Therefore, this court is ordering an immediate and full-scale federal investigation into the training, practices, and oversight of this airport security division. And I will be presiding. For the first time in my life, I struck the gavel not to pass judgment on another, but to demand it for myself. The fallout was swift and merciless. My order, backed by the undeniable video evidence, hit the system like a lightning strike. Officer Mark Keller was terminated within 48 hours, his career ending not with a bang, but with a sterile HR email. But I knew he wasn't the disease, he was just a symptom. My investigation went deeper. We subpoenaed 5 years of TSA records from the Denver airport. What we found was a sickening, predictable pattern. 14 formal misconduct complaints, all filed by Black, Latino, or Arab passengers, have been buried in bureaucratic limbo. A mother traveling with her autistic son subjected to a humiliating search. A Sikh man detained for refusing to remove his turban. Each story was a quiet echo of my own, a moment where a uniform and a badge were used to dehumanize someone who looked different. They weren't a few bad apples. It was a poisoned orchard. In my official ruling, I didn't just focus on Keller. I called it what it was, a pattern of procedural bias embedded into discretionary authority. I mandated a complete overhaul of their training protocols and established a new, civilian-led oversight committee. For the first time, the watchdog would be from outside the kennel. A week later, I knocked on the door of a small apartment in Aurora. Chloe Vance opened it, looking tired but defiant. She was still on suspension, her future uncertain. "I heard what you did," she said quietly. "Thank you. You're the one who made it possible, Chloe," I replied, handing her a thick envelope. "You held onto the truth when it would have been easier to look away." She opened it, her eyes widening as she read. It was a formal job offer. Chief Ethics and Training Officer for the new Federal Airport Oversight Committee. Her throat tightened. "They'll never listen to me. I was just a junior agent." I smiled. "They'll listen. You're not just an agent anymore. You're the conscience of the entire organization. You're going to help me remind them what integrity looks like." The story exploded across the country. An investigative blogger named Marcus Thorne, who had received a copy of the video from an anonymous source, I suspected Chloe had a backup plan, wrote a viral piece titled, "The Judge They Shot, the System She Judged." It became a rallying cry. Legal scholars started calling my framework for independent review the Whitaker Standard. They had tried to silence me with a bullet. Instead, they had given me a megaphone. I had survived, yes, but survival was never the point. The point was to dismantle the machine that aimed the gun in the first place. And that work was just beginning. A month after the shooting, I sat before the House Subcommittee on Government Oversight in Washington, D.C. The chamber was a circus of flashing cameras and whispering aides. I wasn't there as a victim. I was there as an architect. A congressman from Oklahoma tried to frame my actions as a personal vendetta. "Are we to rewrite national protocols every time a federal official has a bad experience?" he drawled. I met his gaze without flinching. "I'm not here because I had a bad experience, Congressman. I'm here because I survived an experience that many others did not. I'm here because their stories were buried long before mine went viral." I placed a stack of 14 letters on the table, the 14 buried complaints from Denver. One by one, I had a clerk read them into the congressional record. The room grew silent as the quiet tragedies of ordinary people filled the air. That afternoon, I submitted my resignation from the U.S. Court of Appeals. It wasn't a retreat, it was a redeployment. Justice, I had realized, couldn't just be administered from a high bench. It had to be fought for on the ground. I accepted a position to lead the new National Independent Oversight Council, the very body born from my ruling. Months passed. The council, with Chloe as my right hand, began implementing radical, new training programs across the country. It was slow, grueling work, fighting against decades of institutional inertia. One evening, I found myself back at the Denver airport, flying to a conference. No cameras, no fanfare. Just me, in a simple blazer, walking through security. I placed my bag on the belt. The TSA agent, a young man I'd never seen before, glanced at my ID, then up at my face. A flicker of recognition crossed his eyes. He didn't say my name. He didn't offer any special treatment. He just nodded respectfully. "Have a safe flight, ma'am," he said. I nodded back. "Thank you." And I walked through. No tension, no fear, no assumptions. That quiet, utterly normal moment, that was the revolution. That was the victory. Justice isn't always a thunderous verdict in a crowded courtroom. Sometimes, it's the silence that follows when a system finally learns to see you as a person. This story, this experience, it changed me forever. It reinforced that a title or a robe doesn't protect you, but your voice and your courage can. This happened to me, but it reflects the experiences of so many who are never heard. I want to know what you think. What does real, everyday justice look like to you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a real conversation about this. And please, comment with respect for everyone's perspective. If this story meant something to you, please share it and subscribe to the channel. Together, we can give a voice to the unheard.